I'm excited, and so I don't really care if you're excited because I'm going to get my own word from the Lord tonight, but that's just for me. I would encourage you to get your word from the Lord tonight. There's nothing special about me, but the King's in the room, and when the King's in the room, he'll speak right to your situation. Like, how are you doing that? How we all got different backgrounds? Because God is in everybody's business. He's not just in my business. He definitely in your business. But he in everybody's business. Look at your neighbor and say, God has been in your business. All right, then. That's just an accountability check, okay? I'm going to just keep you honest tonight. I don't care where you've been, what you've been doing, but God has been there with you. And so tonight, if you're heavy, if you feel stressed out, if you feel like you cannot go on tonight, the King of Glory wants to fill your life with peace. He wants to fill your life with joy. He wants to fill your life with kindness. He wants to break some of your hard hearts that have been so against him. But he is coming to you tonight because he wants to speak right to your situation. And tonight I've got a word that I think is going to help you to break off some scales off of what you've been seeing. Some things that you've been looking at that haven't been helping you. Tonight I want to help you see the right things to look for. Because sometimes we get distracted and we don't realize that we've got to figure out what we should be looking at. So tonight, I want to teach you a little principle about seeing. Look at your neighbor and say, I'm going to teach you a little principle about sight. All right. I was just testing you to see if you would jump the gun, fill in the blank. Clearly, this is not the most talk back environment. So we're going to work on that as we preach. If I preach to you tonight, you better say something. All right. It drives me nuts when you'll talk back to me when I'm talking about a camp announcement, but you won't talk back to me when I'm talking about the God who's speaking to your heart. It drives me nuts. I'm going to preach till I'm blue in the face, but you better say something back to me just so I know you still hearing me. All right, so we ain't talking about ears. I'm talking about sight. Now, Jesus has been doing ministry. The context of tonight's scripture, you can turn to Matthew 11 if you got a physical Bible and you're going to heaven on an extra ticket fare. Matthew 11 is where we'll be tonight. And Jesus has been doing ministry. And there's this guy who is the cousin of Jesus. Any Bible scholars in the room? Who is the cousin of Jesus? James is his brother. John the Baptist is his cousin. Remember, Elizabeth, she had this baby, and Mary rolled up on her, and they had a little pregnant, mojo going on, and the babies were rolling around. They said, oh, my baby leaped in my spirit. And when Jesus showed up, and then Elizabeth said, well, John just leaped in my womb. And so they were having a little fist bump in the womb. And so John the Baptist is his cousin, and John the Baptist was actually prophesied in the Old Testament. They said there's going to be a man who's going to be strange. Now, the guy, John the Baptist, is a very strange guy, had fur on his back, not just like a werewolf, he just carried around animal skins from things that he killed like trophies. And he ate locusts, gross bugs, dipped them in honey. But he loved Jesus. And he was in the forest, in the wilderness, prophesying there is one coming. So he was the greatest preacher in the planet until Jesus showed up and had to show him up. But John has been doing everything that he's been called to do. John was a perfect Christian. He was. He was doing everything he was supposed to do. And all of a sudden, John, who's been doing everything God will go all the way, finds himself in jail. I wouldn't want to find myself in jail, but I might find myself in jail. But can I tell you something? When you get punished, you ask questions. When you find yourself in a predicament you didn't expect to be in, you begin to question some things. That's where our friend John's at tonight. Matthew chapter 11, verse 1 says this. Now, when Jesus had finished giving these instructions to his 12 disciples, he went out to teach and preach in towns throughout the region. John the Baptist, who was in prison, heard about all the things the Messiah was doing. So he sent his disciples to ask Jesus, are you the Messiah we've been expecting? Somebody say expecting. Or should we keep looking? Somebody say looking. For somebody else. Jesus told them, go back to John and tell him what you have heard and seen. The blind see, Jesus says. The lame have begun to walk. Those with leprosy are being cured. The deaf hear. The dead are raised to life. And the good news is being preached to the poor. Verse 6, and he added, God blesses those who do not fall away because of me. Tonight I want to preach to you using this as a title. Seeing power. Seeing power. Look at your neighbor, say, seeing is believing. And believing is seeing. Seeing power. I don't know about you, but I need the power in my life. I can't really do much in my life unless I have the power to do so. Sometimes I get myself in a situation that I wish I didn't get in, and then I recognize that in the situation there's somebody of greater authority, and I've got no power to get myself out of it. I realize sometimes I find myself doing something dumb, and my mom or my dad will get mad at me, and they will say, hey son, well now you're grounded. And now I recognize, though I thought I was big, bad, and ugly, doing all the things I wanted to, I recognized I didn't got the power. Somebody else do. And somebody above me's got the power, and that is not what I wanted, because I recognized I no longer had the ability to get myself out of a situation. But I found myself in life, I don't know if this is just me, I found myself being able to see what I'm looking for. What do I mean? Do you know what I mean? I've been able to see what I'm looking for. The other night I was driving home. It was late. I think it might have been after youth last week. And I was driving home and I was tired, okay? I don't know if you know this, but I get tired. I'm not a superhero. I wish I was. But I just get as tired as you. And so I was driving home, and sometimes when I'm driving home late at night, my eyes begin to play tricks on me. And the reason I think it happens is because one time, the day after I got engaged to Michaela, I was driving home at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I smashed into a deer, and I totaled my car. And it was very sad because it was one of the best days of my life. And then all of a sudden it became the worst day of my life. And so I said, God, is this a sign I should not marry Michaela? But then the Spirit of God, much like you, spoke loudly and said, no, it's not a sign. You're just tired. I said, okay, I can work with that. But because of that, now when I'm driving home, every mailbox looks like a deer to me. Every single one. I don't know how, but in my mind, mailboxes can move. And I'm like, is it going this way? Is it coming over here? How are you doing that? But then I get up, I hit the brakes, then I get the gas, then I hit the brakes, and I realized I was seeing what I was looking for. But then the other night, we're driving home, and all of a sudden, I thought I was having another out-of-body experience with a mailbox. I thought it began to move. I was nervous. I'm like, that mailbox is really gonna hurt if I hit it. And lo and behold, it was a possum about the size of me rolling across the road. I said, trying not to hit it. And I said, now this is how the devil be working on my life. All the times that I think I saw something, I didn't. But then in the moment when I stopped recognizing it, something was out to get me. But I've been able to realize that I can see what I'm looking for. So if I'm looking for that mailbox to be a deer, in my mind, I see a deer. It's like in the closet. When you were a kid, you know, all your clothes hanging in there, and you could have sworn you checked that closet before you got in your bed. Oh, you could have checked it 3 or 4 times. And then all of a sudden, you laid down and you said, what on earth is that? I'm telling you, I still do that. I'm 24 years old, for God's sake. I'm like, bro, I know I locked the door. Michaela, did I lock the door? I don't know. Why? How did they get in here? And I turn on the light, and it's literally just one of my stupid hats falling down. But I was seeing what I was looking for, because the lens in my life was fear, so I saw it. I was dealing with something in my own heart. I laid down and I was a little stressed about something, and because I hadn't dealt with the stress in my life, I saw something that wasn't in there that even stressed me out all the more. But I've recognized I've got seeing power. I've recognized that I've been able to conjure up in my mind the exact thing that I'm looking for. Am I able to see it or not? And sometimes that's a good thing. You need to be able to see it. But sometimes my mind will play tricks on me. Just like with the clothes in the closet. I don't want to see that. Why? Because all of a sudden I get even more stressed. But I was in control of that. But because I saw it, it became real to me. And I'm trying to preach to somebody tonight who's been seeing some things in your life that are not really there, but the devil's been trying to use them to tell you it's real. I'm gonna give you seeing power tonight. Anybody need seeing power in your life? The ability to smell out a snake when a snake comes rolling up on you. I'm talking about the kind of power that when the devil begins to chirp in your ear, you recognize, no, I see this. You just got smoke and mirrors. This ain't even real. I see the haze. I see you pretending. No. That was a promise from God. You can't turn it into a bad thing. You can't turn it into pain. No, God said everything that the enemy tries to curse me with, he's gonna bless me with. So I don't know about you, devil, but I am seeing what you're doing. Oh, you got to have seeing power in your life, friend, because if you have seeing power, everything else is easier. Because the imagination is not a curse, it's a blessing. Yeah, I'll say it again. Your imagination is not a curse, it's a blessing. You've been using it wrong. You've been using it to think up the worst things that could happen to you. You've been using it to go down this road of mailboxes getting legs. You've been creating situations with your imagination when God's actually given you that gift to be able to see into the future and see what God wants to do with your life. That's real seeing power. The ability to look past my situation and say, yeah, I know mom and dad are splitting up and I don't know how the situation is going to go out. Am I even going to see my siblings? Because one of them is going to get custody over here. I might get custody over here. But do I have the ability to see and trust that when God says he's going to be for me and not against me, then that's actually what is true. I've got to be able to see through the smoke and mirrors. The devil is a clown house. He really is. I'm pretty sure he's scared of his own shadow. But he lives in your shadow. Yeah. The devil been living in your shadow. You can't see him because he's behind you. And you haven't been able to figure out how to just turn around and make it disappear. The shadow has been nipping at your heel. But I don't know if you've read the book. When he nips at your heel, you get to crush his head. That's seeing power. Jesus on his knees praying. A snake coming after him. He says, get off me. He was praying in the spirit. So when you're in the spirit, in the flesh, everything is easier. But most of us live our life 9 to 5 every day, sometimes later, in the flesh. And we show up 2 hours a week in the spirit and try and figure out why it's not working. Why is this not working? Why is my life just falling apart? Well, because you haven't been able to see the tricks of the enemy. But I want to help you tonight get seeing power. Because listen to me, the world you live in is a result of the lens you look through. The world you live in is only a byproduct of what you see. It's like this stupid Barbie movie that just came out. They living in a fantasy land, Barbie land. It's a result of the lens she's looking through. Where stuff isn't real. It's whatever you want it to be. No, we've got to be able to recognize the world we live in is a result of what we're looking through. I'm creating my own destiny. I'm putting myself in bad situations. That was my lens. My lens was I wanted my friend to think I was cool, so I accepted the offer when they invited me to that party, and now all of a sudden I found myself in a deep pit of sin. Even though I love God, I didn't even want to be here. I found myself doing things I never wanted to do because the lens I was looking through was to be cool and not be accepted by God. Seeing power. The power to see the truth. That's where our friend John is struggling. Because John, remember, he's doing everything. He's in the wilderness baptizing people, hundreds of people. You think we baptize a lot of people at this church? John was baptizing that many people every day. Repent, believe in Jesus. Simplest, most powerful sermon. People, I'm coming to the tank, just running straight into the water. I mean, it didn't even make sense, but the power of God was so evident in John's life. And John was doing everything that he was called to be. John was living out every dream that he had in his heart. John was living every little bit and piece and this and that. And on this Tuesday, I'm going to follow this word. And on Wednesday, God, you gave me this word, so I'm going to do that. That's what John was doing. And he finds himself in prison. And he doesn't realize what's going on. You put verse 3 up on the screen for them to see this. This is the question that John ends up asking. Because he doesn't recognize. Look at this. Are you the Messiah we've been expecting, or should we keep looking for someone else? John the Baptist, living out his full destiny and calling. John, who was Jesus before Jesus, right? He's the prophetic word from the Old Testament that said there will be one who will prophesy before the Messiah comes, and he will do the same things that I will do, but he will be a forerunner. This is John in prison asking about Jesus. Are you really him? I mean, this guy was convinced. But have you ever found yourself in that low moment beginning to question everything? Oh, you know God's for you. That's why you come to youth and sing the songs. You know God was with you in that situation. That's why you prayed last night on your knees. But it got worse. Have you ever prayed and the situation got worse? Have you ever asked God to take something away and you felt like all the hell even more got on your life? God, please, do you see me? And then you got even worse news. Smack to the left, smack to the right. Floyd Mayweather here, Conor McGregor here, sending you left, sending you right, gut punch, kicking you everywhere that you don't want to be kicked. I'm talking about when you have been praying to God, you trust God, you love God, but in those moments, have you ever doubted God? John the Baptist doubted. John the Baptist. I mean, talk about knowing what you're called to do. This guy had books upon books of prophetic words about his life. Oh, let me read Isaiah this today. This will tell me exactly what I'm supposed to do. A voice in the wilderness eating locusts? All right. Great. This guy had the game plan. But then he got into a situation where he asked, are you the one we've been expecting, or should I keep looking? And I don't know about you, but maybe you've been backsliding in your faith and you've been asking yourself this same question, but you didn't have language for it. But God's let you down in your mind. And so you begin to ask the question, God, I know you can do miracles. I've seen you do it, but I just got my own situation. I don't know what to do with it. Are you really the one I was expecting, or should I keep looking? Should I try out alcohol? Should I try out drugs? Should I try out giving my body away? Should I try out hanging out with the wrong crowd? Should I try looking for somebody else that can fill my need? Because I prayed to you, but I don't feel like you were listening. I asked you for help, but I don't feel like you were responding. Oh, it's hard to pray and not get a response. Oh, just me? Okay, I said it's hard to pray and feel like you don't get a response. It's so exhausting, pouring out your guts before the Lord, getting on this altar, expecting God to have done something, and you feel like he didn't do anything. You've been spilling your heart out, getting no response, and John is like, I'm in prison, getting ready to be executed. Are you really Jesus the Messiah? And not only that, this is his cousin. How many of y'all been turning on your family in the moment that you were stressed? It wasn't them. They got their own stuff too. Don't take it out on the wrong person. Nah, this enemy been working to try and get into every crack and crevice you will allow him to. But when you can't see him, you forget he's there. I'm trying to help somebody tonight. I need you to look into those secret places. I need you to expose your secret places. I need you to tell somebody about what you're struggling with, because you are not strong enough on your own. And not only will you continue to struggle, it will get worse. But you've got to be able to open up your mouth and tell somebody stuff you've never told anybody. Do not be afraid to be vulnerable with people you can trust, because when they know about it, they can fight with you. And then when they can fight with you, they can pray for you. Do you know how many people I've had praying over my life in situations where I could have been dead? Situations where I would have never found myself back in church, but yet there were people who knew about my issues and struggles. So even though they didn't know how to text me and ask me questions, they were praying for me. And then I can go back and tell them about the situation I was going through, and I finally was humble enough to let them know. And they said, oh, I knew. Friend, your friends know what you're struggling with, but you've got to invite them into conversation. They've got to feel the liberty to speak into it. And so instead of doing that, John gets so mad. Because what happened was he lost his focus. Look at your neighbor and say, don't lose your focus. It's really important to have focus. But I'm going to give you some statistics tonight because we are fighting this thing. It's the worst spirit in the earth, practically the worst demon. I want to cast him out every time I deal with him. It's the spirit of a bad attention span. Spirit of a bad attention span. Here the moment, next the moment, squirrel, dog. Woof, woof. Whatever it is that you're passionate about, you've got, here we go, let me just give you the stats. I don't even try to make it up. In the last 15 years, our attention span as a culture has gone down 25%. Goldfish have a longer attention span than you. I can get them Jones for $2 at Petco. And they got a better attention span than me. How's that work? But it's been declining. It wasn't always like that. Because here's what happens. We are forgetful because we get distracted. Watch this. 25% of teens forget major details of close friends and relatives. You suck at remembering your mama's birthday. Get better. This is even worse. 7% of us forget our own birthday. I don't even know that's possible. You don't have to confess it tonight, okay? You can come to the altar later. And then 39% of Americans have forgotten one basic piece of information or lost an everyday item just this past week. We are forgetful because we get distracted. We are forgetful because we get distracted. We are forgetful because we get distracted. You know what we get distracted by the most? What was it? Your phone. Here you go. Here comes the conviction of the night. The average user picks up their phone more than 1,500 times a week.
Sometimes I forget.
And that number is a tithe on the amount of water balloons we have outside later, 15,000. But this is why, because you're bouncing from app to app, scroll to scroll, video to video. The average length of a video you watch is 2.5 minutes. 2.5 minutes. That's why 1,800 of you have to get up and go to the bathroom while I'm preaching. You don't actually have to go to the bathroom. You've sat through at a sports game that you like longer than that. You were at the concert longer than that. You didn't have to go to the bathroom. But for whatever reason, I lost your attention and you decided, what's the next best thing I could do? I gotta go to the bathroom. It drives me nuts. I think you're standing up because I'm preaching good. No, you're just walking out. What is that? But the reason is because you get distracted. And instead of locking on, you've just been looking on. It comes here and it comes go. You're not locking on anything. You're looking on everything. Scroll here, swipe here. Oh, I like that. Now the algorithm knows I like that. How did I get all this week? Because it saw you looking on. Looking on this. Oh, that would be really cool if I paid for that. I don't know how I'm gonna pay for that. Oh, but look at this over here. I mean, you literally were about to spend hundreds of dollars on something, and then all of a sudden, a fidget spinner showed up. Your attention was gone. Yeah, those are still a thing. I don't know how, but I saw an ad for one the other day. I'm like, what is going on? Because some Yahoo like you was scrolling, and all of a sudden, there was a fidget spinner, and your attention went, squirrel! Because we get distracted. And so I've been looking on everything, which is why I haven't been able to lock on anything. Hear me. Looking is easy. Locking is hard. It is. Because you have to fight the distractions. You've got to ignore some things. You've got to keep some things in your peripheral. You can't even allow them to get a moment in your eyesight because when you know this, once you see it, you are gone. Ooh, even in conversation. I'll be trying to tell a real conversation with somebody and I'll say something, I'll crack a joke. Most of the time, it's you. But I'll say something, crack a joke to remind you that you can laugh, it's okay, because it's cool to be in church. But then all of a sudden, you're like this to your neighbor. Your attention span, gone. But because you're not fighting your focus. Yeah, we ain't gonna get claps for that one. You've got to fight your focus. You have to fight your focus. Say it with me. You have to fight your focus. I've got to fight for my focus. Because what you look on is what you see. And you've got to stop looking on and you've got to learn to lock on. What do I lock on? You know the answer to that. Jesus. His will. His way. His thoughts. The things that he's put in front of you that are good for you. But you've been looking on anything just to feel anything. I'm going to look at this because it makes me feel something. I'm going to look over here, take my butt over there and do it because I know I want to feel something. But you've got to recognize Jesus says he's the only thing that can satisfy you. But if you don't believe it, you won't see it. And most of us in our life have been treating God that way. I mean, I know it. I sing the song. I listen to the sermon. I believe it. No, you don't believe it because you're not seeing it. You've got to be able to be so locked on to believe that you see everything he has for you. Oh, this Bible is filled with treasures and promises, but the problem is most of us can't lock on for more than 30 seconds to realize that there's things for us. And so at the next sign of conflict, at the next sign of anything else we can go and do, at the next moment we can sell our soul to this and sell our soul to that, we give it up. And all of a sudden now I find myself deep in an addiction to playing games all night long. Now all of a sudden I find myself struggling with anxiety because I haven't locked on to the word. And I'm not just talking about text on a page. I'm talking about the real living God who wants to show up and do something in your life. So stop looking on sin. Oh, you've got to cut it out of your life. Sin isn't a result. Sin is a pre-thought that you have. Jesus says so. This ain't me telling you this. Jesus says it happens here. The attention span happens where? Here. I've got to fight for my focus. I've got to be able to actually resist temptation. I've got to resist the devil. I've got to resist my feelings. I've got to resist my emotions. I've got to resist that temptation to play this again. I've got to resist to go on that site that I don't want to go on to because I have shame every time I do. I've got to resist seeking affirmation from people. I've got to fight for my focus because my focus determines my future. Oh, John the Baptist has done everything for the kingdom of God, but he lost his focus. His focus. John didn't cuss Jesus out. He didn't lose his mind. He just asked a question. But some of you have been struggling so much, you've been asking the wrong questions. Anybody been asking the wrong questions? Oh, you know it's a stupid question. God, do you even see me? You know he sees you. You forget that at the cross, he felt everything that you feel. You forgot that. So that's why I'm going to preach this to you. So you can remember what the truth is. What have you been seeing, John? What have you been seeing? Where have you put yourself? What situation? And the thing about John, this is what helps me understand this and recognize this, is that how much does God have to do for you before you can just believe him at his word? You haven't been through that much life yet. Oh, but if you sat down and you made a list of the things God has blessed you with, oh, you would recognize you should have nothing. But this God gave you everything. And how much do we need him to confirm every little bit of our life before we just know that his word is good? John the Baptist. Oh my gosh, I got to keep coming back to you. Get this. John the Baptist. Pastor John the Baptist. I mean, a man of God in church every week. His church looked like, a couple trees in a corner with a little probably like cover on his mouth so he could talk loud enough. That was his church, but he was there all the time. And even John the Baptist missed it. He's literally been telling people about this Jesus, but then when he's faced with adversity, he doesn't even know if this Jesus is real. How crazy is it to try and convince this world about people like these people that are struggling with things? Oh, don't you just got to know Jesus? You just got to get it. But every single day in my life, I'm doubting him. I'm not saying you can't feel, but I'm saying you've got to fight your feelings. You've got to put up a fight. Oh, you can't just let your feelings I just hear this all the time, especially in Gen Z. Let me get on my soapbox for a moment. Oh, I'm just overwhelmed by my feelings. Bro, your feelings were existing to let you know you're alive. They exist to remind you that you're human. They exist to remind you that you go through some things. They are not in purpose to take control of your life. Oh, they're not meant to do that. They're meant to remind you, oh, when my grandma passed, I cared about her. I felt something. Oh, when I got the bad news at school and I thought I was going to make that team and I got cut and I cried for a week and I never even told anybody about it. It just told me that I cared. Your feelings are your friend. They are not your father. They're your friend. You feel for a friend in your moment and saying, hey, I feel something, but you cannot make them the voice of authority in your life. Your feelings are not your father. I don't know about you, but I've had to, sometimes in my life, been in some scary situations, trusting my dad driving me to practice. Oh, it was some scary days for you, boy. My dad would be swerving. My dad loved to text while he's driving. And I'm telling you, I'm like, yo, they are stopped right now. How are we still getting closer to them? Use your brakes. And it was stressful days. But I had to remember, I'm 12. What do I know about driving? I'm feeling something, but I gotta trust my father, not my feeling. And sir, ma'am, I have never been in a situation where my father has let me down. I've never been in a situation where my feelings helped me out. I've never been in a situation where when I gave feelings more power than they were really worth, I felt better about it. No, but every time I trusted my Father in those moments, He has never let me down. He's never forsaken me. He's never ignored me. No, I don't cry out to my feelings when I'm in despair. I cry out to my Father who hears me. I sought the Lord, He heard me, and He answered. I didn't seek out those feelings because when I sought out the feelings, all I ended up feeling was even worse. But God shows up and He says, let me hold you for a minute. God shows up and says, I know you're hurting right now. God shows up and says, I know you've been through some things, but this is not to curse you. This is to bless you. Your feelings are not your father, friend. But that's what happens when we get in a bad situation. We forget who our Father is. And instead of reminding ourselves, we let the new voice from the father of lies become our father. Friend, you don't recognize how much the devil hates you. You don't recognize it. That's why you keep doing those things that lead you farther from God. Because if you only knew, the closer you get to God, the better. Do you believe that? I do. The closer I get to God, He says, the closer He gets to me. So everything that I do should lead me closer, not further. But when I listen to the father of lies, the father of feelings, the father of my future forecast that's not good for me, and I let him rule my life, I find myself struggling. Oh, and John the Baptist did it. But this is why I'm grateful for John the Baptist, because it tells me this: even people of faith doubt. Even people of faith doubt. John wasn't the only one. Let me give you a couple more. Thomas, you know about Thomas? Thomas doubts the prophecy. Write that down. Thomas doubts the prophecy. Well, what prophecy? Jesus, with His disciples, tells them, I'm going to die. And 3 days later, I'm going to resurrect. And I'm going to return to you. Not one time, not 2 times, but 3 times. I tell you this before I leave you. He tells them that. That's just how when Jesus speaks, that's what I hear in my mind. But He tells His disciples that. But Thomas doubts the prophecy. Jesus told him this would happen. But yet, when he hears that Jesus is resurrected, he said, oh, no, y'all playing a joke on me. Y'all know I care about Him so much, so you're just teasing me. Oh, we don't talk about the fact that Thomas had a great love for Jesus. Oh, but even people of faith doubt. Thomas doubted the prophecy. My friend Gideon, he doubted the plan. Gideon, Oh, yeah, the greatest army in all of Israel. He's got all these people to fight, all these people to take out. And he shows up to God and he says, hey, I got all these men. What you want to do with them? He said, get rid of half of them. He said, hold up. God, I don't think you heard me right. What I said was, I got all these men. What you want me to do with them so we can win this fight? He said, yeah, you heard me. Get rid of half of them. And he whittles it all the way down to a few people. And so Gideon, even though he knows God is good, doubts the plan. So what does he do? He gets a fleece. And you know how when you wake up sometimes in the morning and the grass is wet? That happens overnight. It's called condensation. Go back to science class if you don't know what I'm talking about. He says, okay, God, if this is true, when I wake up, I will leave a fleece out. I want the fleece to be wet and the grass to be dry. Sure enough, what does God do? Fleece is wet, grass is dry. Gideon still doubts the plan. I got one more time. It's just me again. Could you do the opposite? Could you make the grass wet, but the fleece dry? God's like, who is this clown? Okay, fine. So sure enough, he goes to sleep. Gideon wakes up, and it worked out exactly as it said. But Gideon loved the Lord, but he doubted the plan. And then my friend Moses, he doubted the pick. He doubted the pick. Moses has a stuttering problem, insecurity, issue, problem, dynamic, weird family stuff going on. And God picks him to lead the people into the promised land. And Moses says, who, me? I mean, God, anybody else. Literally. You don't see Channing Tatum right over here? I mean, that guy look good, sound good, been in some movies that are pretty good. You don't see him? Me? Moses loved the Lord, but he doubted the pick. On the disciples are great sermon content. The disciples doubted the provision. Oh, so many times Jesus has done miracles for them. Oh, look at this. Look at me do this. Look at me heal this person. Look at me cure this thing. Look at me do this that you've literally never seen in your entire life. Let me do this, and you can go with that. And you can go with this, and you can go with that. He says all of this stuff, and then there's a crowd of 5,000 people sitting on a hillside. And they look at Jesus and they say, hey, bro, you got to get these people out of here. Send them away. And Jesus says, no, you clowns, you feed them. But they doubted the provision. But the disciples loved God. They wanted to honor him with their life. I'll keep going. Abraham and Sarah doubted the promise. They've been wanting a baby. God, give us something. I'm begging you. Give us what we need. Give us what we've prayed for. And God shows up to Abraham. Abraham's got faith. So he tells his friends about it. Hey, you don't believe this prophetic word we got at church last week? He said, I was at the altar. Pastor Russell put his hand on me. And he said this little thing. He said, hey, you're going to have a son. And Abraham started doing the Holy Ghost two-step. He said, hey. He was excited. And he's telling his homie this. And his wife laughed. She laughed. How could this be, bro? You know how old I am. Trust the science. How could this be? They doubted the promise. Oh, but they love God. But they doubted the promise. You and me, we doubt the process. We do. Oh, well, God, you see, when I said I wanted you to give me that platform in this area of my future life, oh, God, when I said I wanted you to take away this anxiety and this addiction I've been dealing with, oh, God, when I said do this, and that, I didn't mean you would actually make me work for it. I actually meant like by the snap of your fingers, I'd go to youth one night, you just lay your hands on me, I'd picture it. Honestly, God, I came in tonight, I was picturing your face, and all of a sudden, I looked at you in my eyes, and you breathed on me, and I thought you would take it away. Well, he did. You brought it back because you don't trust the process. I don't trust the process. That's why I take things into my own hands. I don't trust it. Even though God says it's for my good, I think I got a better concept on God's process than I think God has on his own process. What the heck is that? I've been here for 24 years. He's been here forever. And I know better. Well, God, we'll see you. I thought when you told me to take this opportunity and to try this thing out and to audition for this show and play on this sports team, I thought that meant I was going to the league. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to go pro with this thing. And he said, no, you dummy. It was to teach you that when you get cut, how do you respond? That's not fun, but you know what it's called? The process. We doubt the process. One more. Peter, he doubts the peripheral. He doubts the peripheral. You know what peripheral is? It's your peripheral, you've heard this, vision. You look forward, but out the corner of my eye, I can see that Trevor is laughing at me. That's peripheral. I'm figuring it out because I'm looking straight, but I see that Luke's tapping his toes because he's getting antsy because he knows the next thing's coming. This is peripheral vision. It's something that you have and I have. But here's the problem. Your peripherals can help you or they can harm you. Okay, let's look at Peter. Why not? Let's put it up on the screen for them. Matthew 14:28. Jesus shows up in the middle of a storm. Here we go. Then Peter called to him, Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you walking on water. Yes, come, Jesus said. So Peter went over to the side of the boat and walked on the water toward Jesus. But when he saw the strong wind, but when he saw the waves, but when he saw, he was terrified and began to sink. Save me, Lord, he shouted. Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. You have so little faith. Jesus said, why did you doubt me? And when they climbed back into the boat, the wind stopped. Then the disciples worshiped him, saying, you really are the Son of God. When he saw. What do you see when you look? What do you see? I'll tell you what Peter saw. The wind and the waves. But instead of recognizing that Jesus was Lord of the wind and the waves, though they were just in his peripheral, Jesus was his focus. My scripture tells me Jesus was his focus. It was in his peripheral. But it became powerful when he placed his attention on it. It didn't say as he was walking, he began to slowly sink. No. It said his gaze was on Jesus. The peripheral was wind and waves. And when he saw. So my question for you is what do you see when you look? What do you see? Are you creating a situation in your mind? Or are you allowing God to be the Lord of that situation? Oh, see, because the wind and the waves were real. They were in a storm. Jesus showed up like a ghost, spooked them. They said, I'm not sure what's going on here. Peter, a moment of faith. Lord, if it's you, let me come walking on water. He does the craziest thing I think in the Bible. Because all these other miracles, it's like, yeah, we saw God do this. I never saw another water walking miracle. Did you ever see one? I never saw one. I'm still reading looking for one. I'm living looking for one outside tonight. I'm looking for a miracle to walk on water. Peter gets to be known for that. That's his highlight. And how can you so fast go from a highlight to a low light? Here's my issue with this text. We don't talk about his faith, we talk about his doubt. But even people of faith doubt. He doubted the periphery. I doubt the process. Gideon doubts the plan. Come on. We are doubting him when he's called us to step out. I'm looking for some people in the room tonight to figure out what it looks like to see correctly. What do you see? More importantly, when you see, what happens? Do you sink or do you stand? When you see, do you begin to sink and God's got to reach down, or do you stand? Oh, because there's some other situations too. Paul saw faith in a person when he was preaching and he healed them. Elijah's servant was told to go look for rain because Elijah felt the word of the Lord was that it was going to rain. And he looked 7 times. And on the 7th time, he saw a cloud the size of a man's hand. What are you going to do when you look? How are you going to respond to what you see? Are you going to sink or are you going to stand? See, the wind and the waves begin to crash on Peter as he's walking on water, but he has a decision to make. He could have stood both literally and spiritually and kept walking to Jesus, getting closer to Jesus. But most of us in our faith have walked out on the water. We've given out an opportunity for God to do something with it. We've begun to get closer to Him. But all of a sudden, when the peripheral vision, the wind and the waves, the thing that God is still Lord over, show up in our life, we begin to sink. Am I preaching to anybody tonight? You've been trying. I know you have. I can see it on you. You've been trying to do the right thing. You're not coming to church because you hate God. You're coming to church because you're trying to live better for God. That's why you're here. That's why you're here. And if you don't know that yet, soon God will speak to you and it will open up your eyes. I'm praying for it. But that's why you're here. You're trying to walk on this water called life, though it's a little bit shaky and a little bit moving to the left and to the right. And there's wind and there's waves called anxiety, depression, called the spirit of the age, called suicide. All these wind and waves, can I tell you, He is still Lord today of the wind and the waves. It's got a different name, but it's doing the same thing. But it doesn't have power until you put your attention on it. Oh, the waves are just waves when Jesus is in the room. The wind is just wind when Jesus is in the room. Oh, depression is just a word when Jesus is in the room. Those thoughts of killing yourself, friend, are just a thought when He's in the room. Oh, and He's not just in this physical room, friend. He's dwelling and inhabiting right here, your room, your house, your temple. Oh, but you've got to remember, it's just a peripheral vision. But you've got to figure out where to look. Let me show you one more thing to help you tonight. Let me close it here. Is this helping anybody? Can you give me Romans 8 right here? Watch this. Romans 8, Paul says this. Yet what we suffer now is nothing compared to the glory He will reveal to us later. For all creation is waiting eagerly for that future day when God will reveal who His children really are. Against its will, all creation was subjected to God's curse. Here we go. But with eager hope, the creation, say this with me, looks forward to the day when it will join God's children in glorious freedom from death and decay. We are looking forward. Listen to me, the only reason you should look behind you is to see what's on your back, to see what you've already been through. But your gaze for your future cannot be behind you. It must be what lies ahead of you. That's what Paul's trying to tell us. Oh, because if I look to my side, if I look to my left and to my right, I might worship a little less hard than I used to. You know me, when I was your age, I went to one church, and at that church I felt real comfortable. And I would worship at the altar. I would go after it. I would raise my hands. I would sing. I would worship the Lord because I loved Him. And then one Sunday, one of my best friends in the whole world invited me to go to church with him. And I showed up there, worshiping, started, and this was me in the pew. Because you know what was in my peripheral vision? My friend. And I thought he might judge me if I worshiped the way I really wanted to. And so it prevented me from giving God everything that I had. It prevented me from being everything He called me to be. And I don't know where you're at tonight, friend. But can I urge you, look forward. Oh, don't look to the left and to the right. Oh, don't look backwards at your past life, because you don't need to give it any attention, because it doesn't have power unless it gives you attention. That's why most of us get stuck back in our old traps. God, I thought you took this. God, I thought I was done with this. But you were the problem, friend. I was the problem. I thought I got over comparing myself to other people, but then I look back at it. There's actually a story in the Bible. Lot and his wife, they're leaving a bad situation. God set him free. He's given him an opportunity. And he says, but do not look back. And what happens? She looks back and she perishes. Poof. Friend, I'm talking to you in your spiritual life the same way tonight. If you want your faith to build, you've got to look forward, not backward. You've got to look forward, not to the left or to the right. I'm talking to somebody tonight who's been struggling in your faith, and the wind and the waves of this life have begun to rock the sides of the boat. Like John the Baptist, who found himself in prison, all of a sudden not remembering everything that Christ had done for him. Oh, and I want you to see this verse. Let's go back to it. This verse, I don't know. Let me tell you. Matthew 11, I think I have it in my notes somewhere for you guys. Verse 4, Matthew 11, verse 4. As they pull it up, I need you to see this. Watch this. Jesus told these guys who were questioning him for John, go back to John and tell him what you have heard and seeing power. Seeing power. Seeing power. What have you heard and seeing power? What have you heard and seeing power? What have you heard and seeing power? What have you seen me do that you can trust the rest of your life upon? What have you seen me do? He says, John, can I remind you of those times where you saw lame people and all of a sudden they began to walk? John, can I remind you, there were people that you saw and they had leprosy, and by the instant of my voice, they began to stand up and they were healed. John, do you remember there were people who cut a hole through the roof and they came down to meet me and they got healed? John, what have you heard? What have you seen me do? Do you know why it gives me hope tonight? Because when Jesus was on the cross, oh, you know what gave him staying power? You know why he was able to stay on that cross for me? Because he had seeing power. He saw me tonight. He saw me in my addiction. He saw me addicted to drugs. He saw me addicted to pornography. He saw me cutting myself in my room. He saw me falling apart, and he said, I've got to stay because I can see. I've got to stay because I can see. I've got to stay because I can see. Go ahead and stand up if you're not. Oh, friend, our God has got seeing power. And if he had seeing power, I've got to have seeing power. What do you see when you look? John says, should I look for somebody else? Can I help you if that's your question tonight? No. Do not look anywhere else. Look forward. With the world behind you, the cross in front of you. That's what you're building your life upon. Because Christ already took every bit of your pain and your addiction. Go ahead and close your eyes, bow your heads in this room. If tonight you've been struggling with what you've been looking at, some things might be sinful. Some things might be things that just get your focus messed up. And you've been looking on life, but tonight you want to get locked on Jesus. Maybe you've given your life to him before, but tonight, no, I'm not going to look on my insecurity anymore. No, I'm not going to look on my fleshly desire anymore. No, I'm not going to look on my pride anymore. No longer am I going to look on me building my own situation. I'm going to get locked on Jesus. If that's you tonight, I want you to be bold, not for me, but for you, so that you can get seeing power tonight. And I count to 3. If you want seeing power in this room, to be able to see what God's doing for you, be able to see the tricks of the enemy, be able to see him and smell him out, this is for you tonight. Don't miss your moment to respond with faith tonight. God's looking. His eyes search to and fro the earth for anybody who's got faith. If you've got faith tonight, you want to finally kick that thing to the curb. You want to finally get your life on the right track. You want to finally realize you've got ownership to take in your life. This is your moment. Here we go 1, here we go 2, here we go 3. Just throw your hand up. Nobody's looking around. There's no peripheral vision. This is you and God. Keep your eyes closed and your heart fixed on the prize tonight. I'm going to pray for you. God, I thank you for your seeing power. God, I thank you for every individual with their hand raised right now. God, I thank you for the desire to be able to see the things of you, to be able not to look at the things that lead them to distraction, to not look at the things that lead them to lose their focus. God, tonight, would you fill them? God, would you remind them they don't have to doubt because there are things you have done and they've seen them, so it's enough to believe them. God, I speak to every situation right now that's been dragging my friends down. God, I speak to every demon in this room that's been trying to get on their backs. And right now I say, let the Spirit of God in His full power show up, not just right here, but go with them where they step. God, I pray that you would be with them in those moments. God, I pray for clarity and vision in this room tonight. I speak to every scale that's been on an eye, and I say break now in Jesus' name. I speak to everything that's been distracting, and I curse the distractions in Jesus' name. I say focus is coming to your house tonight, but friend, this is your commitment to fight for your focus. You will not give up. You will not make your feelings your God. You will make the Father of heaven and glory be Lord of your life. So tonight, God, if you can do it for me, I say do it for them. God, if you can do it for Abraham and Sarah, would you do it for them? God, if you could do it for Peter, God, could you do it for them? If you could do it for the God of Jacob, the God of Israel, Isaac, Jacob, every single person, God, I thank you that if you've done it before, tonight you'll do it for them. God, would you write some amazing stories in this room? Oh, God, that 2 weeks from now, some of these young men and women will look back to this moment and go, that was the one that God changed my life forever. We give you all the glory, give you all the praise, and all the honor tonight. In Jesus' name, lift up a great shout to God in the house tonight.